The JonBenet Ramsey murder. Evidence, theories, and unanswered questions. It was supposed to be a night wrapped in the glow of Christmas cheer. A serene holiday evening in the idyllic town of Boulder, Colorado. On December 25th, 1996, the Ramsey family, John, Patsy, and their two children, 9-year-old Burke and 6-year-old JonBenet, returned home from a festive party, their elegant Tudor mansion aglow with twinkling lights and seasonal warmth. As snow dusted the quiet streets outside, they settled in for what should have been a peaceful night. But within those walls, something sinister was stirring. By dawn, a frantic 911 call would pierce the silence. A cryptic ransom note would surface, and the lifeless body of a little girl would be found in the basement, turning a holiday dream into a nightmare that would echo across decades. Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, where we unearth the shadows of the past. Today we're crossing borders to dive into one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries in true crime history, the JonBenet Ramsey murder. Evidence, theories, and unanswered questions. JonBenet Ramsey, a radiant 6-year-old, already a star in the dazzling world of child beauty pageants, was discovered murdered in her own home on December 26, 1996. What unfolded was a crime scene riddled with contradictions. A bizarre handwritten ransom note demanding an oddly precise $118,000. A broken basement window hinting at an intruder. A lone boot print that didn't belong. And DNA from an unknown male that defies explanation. Was it a calculated invasion by a stranger lurking in the night, or a tragic secret buried within the family itself? In this episode, we'll take you step by step through that fateful Christmas night, from the moment Patsy Ramsey stumbled upon the chilling note to the grim discovery of JonBenet's body bound and strangled in the depths of her family's home. We'll sift through the evidence, the garrote fashioned from a paintbrush, the undigested pineapple that rewrites the timeline, the duct tape that whispers of staging. We'll unravel the theories that have gripped investigators and the public alike. Was it a botched kidnapping, a family cover-up, or something far more twisted? And the suspects? Where do we begin? John and Patsy Ramsey, thrust under a microscope for their every move. Shadowy figures like Michael Helguth, with his high-tech boots and cryptic boasts. Bill McReynolds, the Santa Claus with a haunting past. Gary Oliva, a predator obsessed with JonBenet's memory. And John Mark Carr, whose false confession stunned the world. Over 1,400 pieces of evidence, 21,000 tips. Nearly 3 decades later, the killer remains a phantom. Yet there's a flicker of hope. Advances in DNA technology, like genetic genealogy, could finally unmask the truth. And John Ramsey, now in his 80s, still fights for answers. The Boulder Police Department hasn't closed the file. With every passing year, the questions loom larger. Will justice ever find JonBenet? Join us as we peel back the layers of this haunting enigma, dissecting the clues, confronting the theories, chasing the unanswered questions that refuse to fade. This is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, where the past demands to be heard. Step with us into the chilling mystery of JonBenet Ramsey's murder, because some stories don't rest until the truth is told. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel, Nickel Investigations, and this is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy,
We bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast.
Background and context. To understand the JonBenet Ramsey case, we first need to meet the family at its center. JonBenet Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia. Her parents were JonBenet Ramsey and Patricia, or Patsy, Ramsey. John was a rising star in the business world, a man who carved out a successful career in the tech industry. Patsy, meanwhile, brought a touch of glamour to the family. She'd been crowned Miss West Virginia in 1977 and had competed in the Miss America pageant, a testament to her poise and charisma. Together, they built a life that seemed, from the outside, picture perfect. In 1991, when JonBenet was just a year old, the Ramseys made a big move. John's career took them from the humid streets of Atlanta to the crisp mountain air of Boulder, Colorado. He landed a key role at Access Graphics, a computer distribution company that was making waves in the burgeoning tech scene. Boulder was a change of pace, a small, affluent city nestled against the Rockies, known for its progressive vibe, outdoor lifestyle, and the University of Colorado. The Ramseys settled into a stunning Tudor-style home in the upscale Chautauqua neighborhood, a 15-room mansion that spoke to their success. It wasn't just a house, it was a statement. With its brick facade, sprawling layout, and quiet, tree-lined street, it's the kind of place where you'd expect a family to thrive. JonBenet was the youngest of two children. Her older brother Burke was born in 1987, making him 3 years her senior. The Ramseys' household was busy, filled with the rhythms of family life, school routines, business trips, and social gatherings. John was climbing the corporate ladder, eventually becoming a president of Access Graphics, which reportedly hit $1 billion in sales under his watch. Patsy, a homemaker by this point, poured her energy into her kids and her community. She was known for hosting elaborate parties, decorating their home with flair, and keeping the family social calendar buzzing. They were fixtures in Boulder's elite circles, friends with influential locals like Fleet and Priscilla White, whose names will come up later. Now let's talk about JonBenet herself, because even at 6 years old, she was already leaving a mark. Named after her father, JonBenet, and with Patricia as a nod to her mum, JonBenet was a bright, bubbly little girl with blonde hair and big, expressive eyes. She was in kindergarten at High Peaks Elementary, a well-regarded school in Boulder, and by all accounts, she was a typical kid in many ways. Playful, curious, and full of energy. But there was one part of her life that set her apart. Child beauty pageants. Patsy, with her own pageant history, introduced JonBenet to this glittery, competitive world. It was a passion project for Patsy, a way to share something she'd loved with her daughter. JonBenet took to it like a natural. She competed in contests across Colorado and beyond, racking up titles like Little Miss Colorado, National Tiny Miss Beauty, and America's Royale Miss. Dressed in sparkly costumes, with her hair styled and makeup applied, she performed routines, singing, dancing, or posing with a confidence that belied her age. Photos from these events show her beaming, a tiny figure in a big spotlight, often clutching trophies or sashes. This pageant world wasn't just a hobby. It shaped how the public would come to see JonBenet. Her mother saw it as a way to build self-esteem, a fun mother-daughter bonding experience. But it wasn't without controversy. Even the 1990s, child beauty pageants sparked debate. Some praised them as harmless fun, while others criticized them for putting too much pressure on young girls or even sexualizing them. Whatever your take, JonBenet's pageant persona, complete with glamorous outfits and that poised smile, would amplify the media storm that followed her death. She wasn't just a little girl from Boulder. She was a pageant princess, a label that stuck and fueled endless headlines. The Ramseys' life in Boulder seemed charmed, an all-American success story. John's business thrived, Patsy kept the family in the social spotlight, and their kids were growing up in a beautiful home with every opportunity. But beneath that polished surface, something was about to shatter. It all leads us to Christmas 1996, a day that started with holiday cheer and ended in a nightmare that's never been fully explained. On December 25th, the Ramseys spent the day like so many families do, celebrating. They attended a holiday party at the home of Fleet and Priscilla White, close friends who lived nearby. Picture it. Twinkling lights, festive music, kids running around, adults sipping drinks and catching up. JonBenet, dressed in a holiday outfit, was reportedly her usual lively self, playing with the other children. The family left the party around 9:30 p.m. and headed home. John later said JonBenet fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the day's excitement. He carried her upstairs to her bedroom, a cozy space decorated with pink walls and pageant trophies, while Patsy followed to tuck her in. Burke went to bed too, and the house settled into the quiet of a Christmas night. The next morning, everything would change. At 5:52 a.m. on December 26, Patsy Ramsey's frantic 911 call would set off a chain of events that turned a family's private tragedy into a national obsession. But we'll get to that in the next segment. For now, let's hold this image. A family in a picturesque Colorado town. A little girl known for her sparkle. And a holiday season that promised joy. Until it didn't. Up next, the crime and discovery. The crime and discovery. It's Christmas Day, 1996 in Boulder, Colorado. The Ramsey family, John, Patsy, 9-year-old Burke, and 6-year-old JonBenet, are enjoying the season like so many others. That evening, they head to a holiday party at the home of their friends, Fleet and Priscilla White, just a short drive from their own house. It's a classic Christmas scene, good food, warm company, and kids buzzing with excitement. JonBenet, known for her bright personality and pageant charm, is right in the mix, dressed festively and soaking up the night. The Ramseys wrap up the evening and leave the Whites' home around 9:30 p.m., driving back to their large, elegant house in Boulder's Chautauqua neighborhood. According to John and Patsy, JonBenet was tuckered out from the day's festivities and fell asleep in the car. When they got home, John carried her upstairs to her bedroom, a space adorned with pink accents and pageant trophies, while Patsy made sure she was settled for the night. Burke was also put to bed and the house grew still. To anyone watching, it was just another family winding down after a holiday well spent. But sometime in the hours that followed, everything changed. The next morning, at 5:52 a.m., on December 26, Patsy Ramsey bolted downstairs and found something that turned her world upside down. A 2.5-page ransom note left on the back staircase leading from the kitchen. Her hand shaking, she scanned the words addressed directly to her husband, John Ramsey. The note demanded $118,000 for JonBenet's safe return, a sum that struck an eerie chord because it was almost exactly the amount of John's recent Christmas bonus. How could a stranger know that? In a panic, Patsy grabbed the phone and dialed 911. Police arrived at the Ramsey home within minutes. Soon the place was buzzing. Officers, friends, and family all piling in as the gravity of the situation sank in. The ransom note laid out a chilling scenario. JonBenet had been taken, and her life hung in the balance. It warned John not to contact the police or involve the FBI, threatening that JonBenet would be beheaded if he didn't comply. Yet here were the police, already on the scene, and John was even arranging the ransom money with his bank, hoping against hope that it would bring his little girl back. Hours passed, with no word from the supposed kidnappers. The note had promised a call between 8 and 10 a.m. The phone stayed silent. By early afternoon, the tension was unbearable. Around 1 o'clock p.m., Detective Linda Arndt, who was overseeing the scene, asked John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to search the house again for anything that might help. They started in the basement, a maze of rooms beneath the sprawling home. That's where the truth came crashing down. In a small, cluttered room, sometimes called the wine cellar, John found JonBenet. She was lying on the cold floor, white blanket draped over her small frame. Her wrists were tied with cord, and a garrote, crafted from a broken paintbrush and a length of cord, was tightened around her neck. Duct tape covered her mouth. John, overwhelmed with grief, lifted her lifeless body and carried her upstairs, crying out for help. But there was no saving her. JonBenet was gone. Patsy's screams echoed through the house as the reality hit. The police scrambled to process what had just happened, but the damage was already done. Not just to the family, but to the crime scene. John moving JonBenet's body, combined with the earlier chaos of friends walking through the house, meant critical evidence was compromised from the start. Later that day, an autopsy pointed to a grim picture of JonBenet's final moments. The coroner determined she'd been strangled with a garrote, a brutal act that cut off her air supply. But there was more. She had also suffered a severe blow to the head, fracturing her skull. The official cause of death was recorded as asphyxia by strangulation, associated with craniocerebral trauma, a homicide, plain and simple. Whether the strangulation or the head injury came first is still debated, but either way, the violence was undeniable. The autopsy revealed other details too. Traces of pineapple in her stomach hinted she'd eaten shortly before her death. Yet her parents said she went straight to bed after the party. A bowl of pineapple was later found on the kitchen table, adding a layer of mystery. There were also signs of possible sexual assault, though that finding has been disputed over the years. Each clue seemed to pull the story in a different direction. And then there's that ransom note. 2.5 pages of handwritten text, penned on a notepad from the Ramseys' own home. It was oddly detailed for a ransom demand, claiming JonBenet was being held by a small foreign faction, and filled with dramatic phrasing like, "Listen carefully," and "Follow our instructions to the letter." A practice draft was even found in the same notepad, suggesting it was written right there in the house. The $118,000 demand, matching John's bonus, only deepened the questions. Was this a kidnapping gone wrong, or something else entirely? The discovery of JonBenet's body in the basement clashed with the idea of a kidnapping. If someone meant to take her, why leave her behind? If it was murder, why stage a ransom note? These contradictions set the stage for an investigation that would stumble out of the gate and never fully recover. Next, it's time to turn our attention to a piece of evidence that's been debated for nearly 3 decades. The ransom note. This isn't just any note. It's a 2.5-page letter that sparked endless questions about who wrote it and why. Was it a genuine demand from a kidnapper? Or something else entirely? Up next, the ransom note, a key piece of evidence. The ransom note, a key piece of evidence. Just before dawn on December 26, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado, Patsy Ramsey heads down the back staircase of her family's home, maybe planning to brew some coffee or get a head start in the day after Christmas. But she reaches the stairs, she freezes. There, laid out across the steps, is a handwritten note, 3 pages long. She reads the opening line, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully." What follows sends her into a panic. The note claims that JonBenet, her 6-year-old daughter, is being kidnapped by a group calling itself a small foreign faction. It demands $118,000 for her safe return, $100,000 in $100 bills, and $18,000 in $20 bills. The instructions are precise, almost rehearsed, but the threats are brutal. If John Ramsey doesn't comply, if he dares to contact the police or anyone else, the note warns that JonBenet will be beheaded. It even says her remains will be denied to the family for a proper burial. The tone is intense, almost cinematic. Lines like, "We respect your business, but not the country that it serves," and "The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested," give it an odd dramatic flair. And then there are the misspellings. Business, with 2 S's, twice instead of business. Possession, the same weird spelling. Were these mistakes genuine or a deliberate attempt to disguise the writer's identity? It's a question that's lingered since day one. Now let's pause here. Ransom notes aren't uncommon in kidnapping cases. This one stands out. Most are short, a few lines scribbled in haste. This one, it's long, detailed, strangely verbose for someone supposedly in the middle of a crime. And that $118,000 demand, it's eerily close to John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus, a detail few outside the family would know. That alone raises eyebrows. But the real twist comes when you consider where the note came from. It wasn't brought into the house by an intruder. No, it was written on paper from a notepad inside the Ramsey home. Even more chilling, investigators found a practice draft in the same pad. Think about that for a second. Someone sat in that house, maybe in the dead of night, drafting and rewriting this letter while JonBenet was still there. That's not the behavior of a typical kidnapper rushing to escape. So who wrote it? Suspicion quickly turned to Patsy Ramsey. She found the note, after all, and some thought her demeanor in the 911 call seemed rehearsed or staged. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation stepped in to analyze the handwriting, comparing it to samples from Patsy, John, and even their son Burke. Their findings were murky. They said they were indications that Patsy might have written it. but the evidence wasn't conclusive. It was enough to fuel speculation, but not enough to prove anything. The media ran wild with it anyways. Could Patsy have staged the kidnapping to cover up something else? The theory gained traction, but it hit a roadblock in 2003. A federal court reviewed the evidence and ruled it highly unlikely that Patsy was the author, based on the opinions of 6 certified handwriting experts. These professionals argued the writing didn't match hers, casting doubt in the CBI's initial hints. Still, the note's origins kept the controversy alive. The fact that it was written on the family's paper, that practiced draft nearby, suggested someone comfortable in the home, someone who didn't need to rush. And then there's the content. Reference to John's bonus. Phrases like Southern common sense that echoed Patsy's roots. It felt personal, intimate, like the writer knew the Ramseys well. For another perspective, let's turn to an expert. Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist with over 60 years of experience. He's seen it all, from celebrity deaths to high-stakes murder cases. When he looked at this ransom note, he was struck by how unusual it was. In all my years of investigating crimes, he said, I've never seen a ransom note like this one. Baden doubted it came from an outsider, pointing to its length, detail, and the fact that it was written on site. His take adds a heavy dose of skepticism to the idea of a random intruder. Here's where the puzzle deepens. If this was a real kidnapping, why was JonBenet's body found in the basement just hours later? A kidnapper would take the victim, not leave them behind with a lengthy note. But if it was a murder, why write a ransom note at all? It's a contradiction that stumped investigators and kept this case in the headlines for decades. The ransom note is a cornerstone of the JonBenet Ramsey mystery, a document that's equal parts evidence and enigma. Was it a calculated ruse, or a genuine demand gone wrong? Nearly 30 years later, we're still searching for the truth. Up next, we'll explore the crime scene itself, the physical clues that both illuminated and muddied this investigation. Evidence at the crime scene. Signs of an intruder. The JonBenet Ramsey case is riddled with physical evidence that has fueled speculation about an intruder's involvement. When the 6-year-old's body was discovered in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home on December 26, 1996, investigators uncovered several clues that didn't align with the Ramsey family, John, Patsy, and Burke. Let's break down these pieces of evidence step by step. The boot print. One of the first intriguing finds was a boot print near JonBenet's body in the basement's wine cellar room. The print came from a high-tech brand shoe, a detail that stood out because no one in the Ramsey family owned footwear of that brand. After checking John, Patsy, and Burke's shoes, investigators confirmed the print didn't match anything in their possession. This lone mark in the dust suggested that someone outside the family may have been present that night, leaving a literal footprint in the mystery. The broken basement window. Another key clue was a broken window in the basement, located near where JonBenet was found. This window caught the attention of Detective Lou Smith, a veteran investigator who later joined the case. He theorized it could have been an entry point for an intruder. Supporting this idea, a suitcase was found positioned directly underneath the window, almost like a makeshift step. Smith proposed an intruder might have used it to climb in or out of the house. while some skeptics argue the window was too small or the surrounding dust and cobwebs were undisturbed, the setup remains a cornerstone of the intruder theory. The mysterious rope. In the guest bedroom on the second floor, investigators discovered a rope that didn't belong to the Ramseys. Found tucked inside a sack, this item baffled the family. No one could account for its presence or purpose. Was it brought into the house by an outsider? Could it have been part of the crime? The rope's unexplained origin adds weight to the notion that someone unfamiliar entered the home, carrying items the Ramseys didn't recognize. The DNA evidence. Perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in the DNA found in JonBenet's body. Testing revealed DNA from an unknown male on her clothing, specifically her underwear and under her fingernails. This genetic material didn't match John, Burke, or any other Ramsey family member, pointing to an outsider. The DNA was a mixed sample, combining JonBenet's blood with the unknown male's DNA, and it appeared in multiple locations, in her underwear and under both her left and right fingernails. This distribution suggests a struggle. Perhaps JonBenet scratched her attacker as she fought back. In 2003, this DNA was entered in the FBI's CODIS database, a system housing over 1.6 million profiles of convicted offenders in unsolved cases. Despite the vast pool, it yielded no match. The absence of a hit means the DNA likely belongs to someone not yet in the system, an unidentified individual who remains a ghost in the investigation. New Forensic Insights, 2016. The DNA story evolved further in 2016 when new forensic analysis uncovered genetic markers from two individuals beside JonBenet on her clothing. This raised two possibilities: contamination of the samples over time, or the chilling prospect of multiple perpetrators. Adding to this, additional traces of male DNA were found on the cord and paintbrush used to fashion the garrote that strangled JonBenet. In total, 6 separate DNA samples from unknown individuals were identified across the evidence. The sheer volume of unidentified genetic material strengthens the argument for an intruder or intruders, while complicating the case's narrative. Why this matters? The evidence at the crime scene, the high-tech boot print, the broken basement window with its suitcase, the mysterious rope, and the extensive DNA findings collectively points away from the Ramsey family and toward an unknown presence in the house. Each piece raises questions. Whose boot left that print? Did someone climb through that window? Where did the rope come from? And who do those 6 DNA samples belong to? Nearly 30 years later, these clues remain tantalizing. Unresolved threads in a case that refuses to be solved. This physical evidence has kept the intruder theory alive, even as debates persist. Some argue the DNA could be from innocent sources, like a factory worker who made JonBenet's clothes, while others see the struggle indicated by the fingernail DNA as undeniable proof of an attacker. Whatever the truth, these findings ensure the JonBenet Ramsey case remains a haunting enigma, the crime scene itself holding secrets yet to be fully unlocked. Up next, more evidence from the crime scene. More evidence from the crime scene. Beyond the boot print, broken basement window, suitcase, rope, and DNA samples already mentioned, the JonBenet Ramsey crime scene revealed several additional pieces of evidence. Number 1. The garrote. What it was. JonBenet was strangled with a garrote made from a broken paintbrush and a cord. The paintbrush belonged to a set owned by Patsy Ramsey, found in the basement, but the cord's source was never identified within the home. Why it matters? The use of a household item like the paintbrush suggests the perpetrator may have improvised with materials on hand, pointing to either someone familiar with the house or an intruder with time to explore. The unknown origin of the cord keeps both possibilities open. Number 2. The pineapple. What it was. A bowl of pineapple was found on the kitchen table, and JonBenet's autopsy showed undigested pineapple in her stomach, indicating she ate it shortly before her death. Why it matters? Her parents said she went straight to bed after a Christmas party, with no mention of eating. This suggests JonBenet was awake, and possibly with someone, after being put to bed, raising questions about who she encountered and when. Number 3. The duct tape. What it was. Duct tape was found over JonBenet's mouth. Fibers on the tape matched a blanket found on her body, suggesting it was placed there after her death. Why it matters. The tape wasn't definitively traced to the Ramsey home, hinting it could have been brought by an outsider. Its post-mortem placement suggests staging, perhaps to mimic a kidnapping scenario. Number 4. The ligature marks. What it was. JonBenet had ligature marks on her wrists from cords, but the bindings were loose and easily removed. Why it matters? Some experts believe the bindings were staged rather than used to restrain her, possibly to mislead investigators. The looseness could indicate haste or inexperience by the perpetrator. Number 5. The stun gun theory. What it was. Marks on JonBenet's body led some investigators like Lou Smith to propose a stun gun was used to subdue her. Why it matters? If accurate, this would support an intruder theory, as the Ramseys didn't own a stun gun. However, the theory is disputed, with others suggesting the marks could be from abrasions or unrelated causes, making it a contentious piece of evidence. Number 6. Footprints in the snow, or lack thereof. What it was? Early reports claimed no footprints in the snow surrounded the house, suggesting no intruder entered or exited. Why it matters? Later analysis showed the ground wasn't fully snow-covered, with clear patches where someone could have walked without leaving tracks. This corrects a misconception that once bolstered the no intruder theory. Number 7. The spider web. What it was. Spider web was found in the broken basement window, leading some to argue it would have been disturbed by an intruder. Why it matters? Experts noted spider webs can reform quickly in cold weather, so an intact web doesn't rule out entry. It's a detail often debated but not conclusive. Hair and fibers, number 8. What it was. Hair and fibers were found on JonBenet's body and clothing. Some matched the Ramsey family, while others were unidentified. Why it matters? Unidentified fibers could point to an outsider. The crime scene's early contamination, due to friends and family moving through the house, complicates the reliability. Number 9. The notepad and pen. What it was. The ransom note was written on a notepad with a pen from the Ramsey home. A practice draft was also found in the pad. Why it matters. This indicates the note was written on site, suggesting the perpetrator had time and access to the house. It could imply either an intruder comfortable lingering or someone already present. Number 10. The 911 call. What it was. Patsy Ramsey's 911 call has been analyzed for potential background voices or anomalies. Why it matters? Some speculate additional voices are audible, hinting at others present. This remains unproven and speculative. It's a point of interest rather than solid evidence. The bigger picture. These additional pieces of evidence, the garrote, pineapple, duct tape, ligature marks, stun gun marks, snow observations, spiderweb, hairs, fibers, notepad, and 911 call, build on the initial findings to create a complex and often contradictory crime scene. They offer support for multiple theories. The intruder theory. Unidentified fibers, possible stun gun marks, and unknown DNA suggests an outsider. Family involvement theory. Household items in the garrote note, the pineapple discrepancy, and staged elements like the bindings point inward. Complicating matters, the crime scene was compromised early on. Friends and family entered the house before police secured it, potentially tainting evidence and casting doubt on its integrity. Up next, investigation and legal proceedings. Investigation and legal proceedings. When 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was found murdered in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home on December 26, 1996, the Boulder Police Department stepped into what would become one of the most scrutinized investigations in modern history. But from the very beginning, things went awry. The crime scene, a sprawling upscale house, wasn't properly secured. Friends and family were allowed to move through the space, potentially trampling over critical evidence. Officers didn't immediately treat the home as a lockdown crime scene. By the time JonBenet's body was discovered by her father, John Ramsey, the damage was done. This mishandling set a shaky foundation for everything that followed, drawing sharp criticism and raising questions about what might have been lost. Suspicion falls on the Ramseys. In those early days, the spotlight turned quickly to JonBenet's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey. The ransom note, penned on paper from their own home and demanding an oddly specific sum tied to John's bonus, suggests an inside job. But it wasn't just the note that fueled suspicion. It was the Ramseys' behavior. They didn't dive into police interviews right away. Instead, they hired attorneys and resisted questioning unless it was on their terms. They appeared on television, pleading for help to find JonBenet's killer. But formal police interviews? Those didn't happen until April and June of 1998, well over a year after the murder. To many, this delay looked like a dodge, a sign of something to hide. The public and the police couldn't shake the feeling that the Ramseys knew more than they were letting on. The grand jury's secret decision. By 1999, the case had enough twists to warrant a grand jury. After months of digging, they reached a stunning conclusion. They voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse, resulting in death, and being accessories to a crime. It was a moment that could have changed everything. Proof that a panel of citizens saw a path to guilt. but District Attorney Alex Hunter saw it differently. He declined to prosecute, arguing there wasn't enough evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt in court. The grand jury's decision stayed under wraps, and the Ramseys walked free, though the whispers of suspicion never faded. A new direction under Mary Lacey. The investigation took a sharp turn in 2002, when a new DA, Mary Lacey, stepped in. Unlike her predecessors, Lacey leaned hard into the intruder theory. The idea that an unknown outsider had slipped in the Ramsey home that fateful night. Her focus zeroed in on a breakthrough: DNA evidence from an unidentified male, found on JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails, tested in 2003. This wasn't familial DNA. It didn't match the Ramseys or anyone in their circle. To Lacey, it was a lifeline for the family. In 2008, she made a bold move, sending John Ramsey a letter declaring the family completely cleared based on this evidence. It was an exoneration that aimed to rewrite the narrative, lifting years of weight off the Ramsey shoulders. But not everyone bought it. Some experts pointed out the DNA could have come from an innocent source, like a factory worker who handled the clothes before they reached the store. Revelations and lingering doubts. The story didn't end without exoneration. In 2013, unsealed court documents peeled back another layer from the 1999 grand jury. It turned out they'd recommended additional charges against the Ramseys, permitting JonBenet to be in a threatening situation and hindering prosecution. These weren't pursued. Hunter's decision still stood, but their existence showed the case wasn't as clear-cut as the 2008 clearance suggested. The legal system, it seemed, had wrestled with doubts about the parents, even as the intruder theory gained steam. A police chief's perspective. Years later, in 2015, former Boulder police chief Mark Beckner weighed in, offering a rare glimpse in the mind of someone who lived the case. He believed the unidentified DNA likely came from the perpetrator, a nod to the intruder theory, but he stopped short of agreeing with Lacey's full exoneration. To Beckner, DNA alone wasn't enough to close the book on the Ramseys. It was a piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture, and that picture remained frustratingly incomplete. Where it stands. The investigation and legal proceedings in the JonBenet Ramsey case being a tangle of missteps, shifting suspicions, and courtroom what-ifs. From the botched crime scene to the grand jury's secret indictment, and from the DNA-driven exoneration to the lingering questions that followed, this case has defied resolution. It's a story of evidence that points in multiple directions, of legal decisions that split opinions, and of a family caught in a storm they couldn't escape. Nearly 3 decades later, the truth remains elusive, but the search for it continues. In part 2, coming next week on Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, we will look into the theories and suspects of this haunting case. If the story's got you hooked, and I bet it has, don't miss out on more cases to keep us up at night. Subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or that little app you love. New episodes drop daily, peeling back the layers of Canada's mysteries and beyond. And we hate for you to miss a single one. Thank you for listening. This has been Jay Nickel for Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice.